Welcome everyone to the Bytes of Intelligence podcast. Today's episode is incredibly special. I'm honoured to be sitting down with Kyle Kothari, a Team GB Olympic diver, someone who was ranked as one of the top 5 divers in the world. But beyond just the accolades, he's the European champion, the Commonwealth Games silver medalist, and his selection for Paris 2024. Kyle's journey genuinely inspires me, and I just hope and know it will inspire so many of our listeners today. As a British Asian myself, seeing Kyle break the boundaries and the barriers in elite sports while balancing an LSE degree and later a career at JP Morgan, I think it just shows us what's possible when talent meets unwavering dedication. From being just one of 4 out of 70,000 kids selected in talent testing to becoming the first UK Jane Olympian, Kyle's story, I think to me it's about defying odds and redefining what's imaginable. Kyle, thank you so much for being here today. I'm genuinely really excited.
Thank you for that great intro.
No, not at all. And yeah, I think for me, you're someone who just is going to inspire the next generation to just dream bigger.
I hope so.
Okay, sweet. So before we dive in, so pun intended, how have you been over the past few months after Olympics?
Yeah, I mean, it's been super busy. I've been... to be honest, I just went on a really big holiday.
Oh, nice.
Whereabouts? Paris. I went everywhere. Because the thing is, when we travel for competitions and stuff, we never get to
it's
explore anything.
Intense.
We just go from the pool to the hotel and back and forth, and that's basically it.
Mm-hmm.
So I did like a big Europe tour where I went to Oslo, Stockholm, nice. Copenhagen, Slovenia, Amsterdam, Barcelona. And then went a few places in Spain and then back to the UK. So it was lasted 2 months, and then when I came back, I actually had to do some stuff here and decide what I want to do.
Exactly, yeah. Over the next few months. Wow, that's amazing. So for listeners who might be new to diving, could you just paint us a picture of what a typical day kind of looks like? Maybe not now, maybe during the Olympics or just before, just after. So what does a typical day look like for a diver?
To be honest, it doesn't really change because I've been back training for like 2 weeks. And usually our day or our week really looks like we train Monday to Saturday and we do...
Every day?
Yeah, well, we get Sunday off.
Okay.
And we just train Saturday morning from 8 till 11 and then we get the weekend off. But our day sort of looks like I live in Harrow, so I leave Harrow at 7. I'll arrive to training at 8:15, warm up for 15 minutes. We'll do an hour in the gym, and then we'll go out to the pool and do an hour and 15 in the pool. Then we'll have like a 2-hour lunch break, and then we'll repeat again in the afternoon and finish around 4.
Oh, wow.
And then that's it. And then you're free to do whatever you want with your evening. I say that, but you're generally too knackered to do anything.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So, that's on a double, so we call that a double day. And then that's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays we just do one session, but we do like a heavy weight session, and then we do a gym session, and then we do a pool session. So it's like about 3 hours on those 2 days. And that's when that's when we try and do like our physio and ice bath and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Very intense.
It's a really intense week. Yeah.
But do you kind of enjoy it, or is it?
Yeah,
I mean, tough mentally.
You know what? It's one of those things where I reckon like if someone who's never done it before tried it for a week, they'd love it because it's so different to what you're used to. But then I've been doing it for 15 years, so yeah, it's not that enjoyable anymore.
Okay. So let's start at the beginning. Can you talk about your whole journey into the whole world of sports? I remember reading about your parents really pushing you because they were quite big on sports. And I think you started with gymnastics, then you moved on to diving. And also you mentioned about the talent testing that kind of changed your whole career, I guess, and that day really made your career as it is today. I just can't wrap my head around being selected as one of 4 of 70,000. So yeah, could you just talk about your early journey into sports, please?
So I mean, so when I was a kid, like I literally had way too much. I was hyperactive, and my parents were trying to get rid of me. So they used to take me, so we live in Harrow, and they used to take me to Harrow Gymnastics Club.
Right, okay.
And then some of the coaches saw me like basically messing around on some of the apparatus and was like, does your kid want to join like one of our like baby squads basically? And yeah, so I started doing that like 1, 2, 3 days a week, and then obviously got a lot better. And then by the time I was sort of 6, it was already at 6 years old, I was training like 5 days a week. But it's not training when you're 6, right? It's just fun, and doing like mini competitions. And I was lucky that my dad took me to do. He was quite sporty himself.
Okay.
Took me to try like every single sport
Nice.
under the sun. It just so happened that I was good at gymnastics.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time I was sort of 11, and I was at that age taking it fairly seriously, and had, a kid's view of what it would take and what I thought I could make the Olympics at the time. I had like a big injury, like dislocated, tore the ligament, and fractured my elbow.
At the age of 11?
Yeah, at a competition. And when I was injured, my school sent out these leaflets where my first diving club, Crystal Palace, used to run this talent identification program where they would go around London schools and just test like a whole class just to see if there was any kids that had the right attributes for diving.
Yeah.
And they had this system where what they did was they imported coaches over from China, ex-Olympic coaches, and just put them in a house that they owned next to the Crystal Palace stadium, gave them free accommodation, and said, run our Olympic diving program. And so what they did, those two things combined, the talent testing and the Chinese coaches, just made this program where they just picked really the best, most talented kids, gave them to these Olympic coaches, and said, right, in 4 years' time, these kids got to be ready for an Olympics.
Wow.
And that was what it was marketed as.
Really? Wow.
And yeah, so I went to this talent testing, and obviously because of my gymnastics background, they were like, we want this kid.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
And this is for diving specifically?
That was just for diving, yeah.
Okay.
And then what happened was when I was 11, I was dead set on gymnastics.
Right.
Because I was, once you've got so much sunk cost, yeah, you're like I put 10 years into this and I'm only 11, basically. Yeah. Or not 10 years, but like, 8 years.
7, yeah, exactly.
The one day of diving turned into 2, then 3, and then both sides were asking me.
Oh, so you're continuously doing
for
gymnastics
a year,
and diving.
I was doing both sports, and I didn't have a rest day.
And you still had school.
And I still had school. But at that age, you sort of, I don't know, I couldn't do that anymore. But
yeah. I guess it's like kudos to your parents for taking you everywhere to each of those plus school.
They must have been so busy.
Yeah.
But both sides were asking, like, if you want to make the top, you have to commit to 6 days a week training, and you've got to up your training hours. And so I ended up picking diving.
What was that kind of reasoning behind that?
It's basically I did between starting diving and my first year of diving, I already went from like 0 to national age group champion, which is like the novice national competition.
Okay.
But that's sort of, it's not really something which you wouldn't expect to do that in your first year. So it was sort of the trajectory of diving looked steeper than gymnastics. Right. So
do you think like the skills you learned while doing gymnastics for 7 years of your life kind of really helped you get that steep trajectory?
I mean, the coaches. So my coach was a Chinese Olympic diver, Shen Yang. He all he had to do really was, instead of teaching me to land on my feet, he had to just teach me to land on my head. Like, he didn't have to teach me much of the skills and a lot of the awareness and things like that, because my gymnastics coaches at Harrow had already taught me that. So it was almost like retraining rather than just having
and I guess that discipline as well, you'd already kind of...
Exactly.
That was in your blood, training.
You could say so. But then, you know what's weird is, like, I thought I knew how to train at that age, but I didn't at all. Like, looking back, like, if I'd stayed like that, I would never have made it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so I started with that program, and then obviously within the first year was successful, and then I was like, right, let's see what's possible here. And it turned out to be the right decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you would have made Olympics in gymnastics as well.
Oh, I'm not sure. But yeah.
Okay, great. And other than that, what was like young Kyle like? Did you have any other hobbies other than kind of gymnastics, diving? Was school like really important to you? Or did it kind of come naturally and you just went along with it?
I think school came naturally, which was nice because it allowed me to do so much outside of school. I think that's really the case for my whole career, actually, even up to university. But it's kind of, I think when I was young, I had to be at school full time.
Yeah.
I didn't, which wasn't the case later on in my career. So there was no time for anything else.
Yeah.
But I'm luckily developed hobbies later on.
Okay, that's great. Okay, brilliant. I just wanted to kind of ask you your thoughts on, so, as we're like children growing up into, let's say British Asian families or just any child generally, at the age of, 11, 12, 15, coming to our GCSEs, we kind of have to start thinking about our future careers and jobs. Yeah. And I feel like, at least for me personally, I kind of found that a bit daunting because you don't know what you want to do, whether it's like medicine or computer science or diving. How did you kind of grapple with the idea of, you're doing diving all the way through from like when you were 5 onwards? How did you kind of, in your head, pick that this is what I actually want to lock into and really want to focus myself on? Because I feel like many kids kind of struggle with that because you might be like good in everything or just average. You don't know what you actually want to do for the next 50, 60 years of your life. Yeah,
I think it's a really difficult question to answer. I get asked this question quite a lot. Mm-hmm. And I try. It's quite a sensitive topic because I don't want to insult my own culture.
Sure, no.
But there is some things where, like for example, your diet at home, where like I had to basically force my family to change what they were eating,
right,
for my sake, at a certain point in my career. And then there's things like the school and these cultural stereotypes that they are true to an extent. Mm-hmm. It's really the funny thing about sport is that there's a lot of risk and a lot of sacrifice that happens at every stage.
Definitely.
And it's easy for me to make that decision because I was very sure about what I wanted. But if your family don't have the same ambition and the same goal as you, or your school, and the school aren't there to support you, then you won't make it. So it's really about getting all aspects of them on side.
That's true.
And my parents were really good at that and were really good at talking to the school and making sure that they understood.
Yeah.
And that only happens because my parents, I think my dad wanted it even more than me.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a difficult one where obviously education was still really important. I still went to...
You went to one of the best unis in the world. But...
So it was something I didn't want to sacrifice. But at the same time, if I had just focused on education, I would have got better grades. I would have taken more subjects. I probably would have done maybe something different, degree-wise.
Okay.
All of my choices were there to facilitate diving.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, you're making economics sound easy, but
no.
It's definitely like...
I mean,
I get what you mean.
Because of the contact hours.
Right.
Like, I wanted to do architecture originally.
Oh, okay.
But 7 years and also having to be in the course all the time.
Yeah, that's very tough.
Yeah,
it's
impossible. And when I was a kid, I wanted to do medicine, and that quickly got kicked out because I was like, I just can't do sport and medicine at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was lucky that I was interested in quite a few things.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is a difficult one where if you really if I was dead set on wanting to be a medic.
Okay.
Like
it's hard to change.
Yeah, I would have to choose.
Yeah.
I would have had to choose. Yeah, it's hard to change.
That's really interesting because even for me when I was younger, I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I liked the cliche idea of like helping people, and I thought I'd love to be a doctor.
Yeah.
I wasn't an Olympic diver.
Yeah.
By any
it seems
means.
like we were both indoctrinated the same way.
Yeah, we were. Except I wasn't like Olympic sports person, but I kind of ended up choosing computer science. But even now, I kind of look back and think it's actually really hard for a kid to choose. I know you can change your career paths. Obviously, if I do computer science, doesn't mean I need to do it. But you're still kind of putting yourself in a position of 3-4 years of studying this subject, and it's kind of hard to choose as a kid because you don't really know like what you want to do.
You know, I'm 26 now, and I know athletes that they feel they would quit.
Really?
They'd hate the sport, but they can't quit because they've put
so
15
much.
years into it, and they're already so good.
Yeah.
That they just feel like they need to see it out.
Okay.
And I feel like that's the same thing about academics sometimes, where like you've picked a certain A levels and then you've picked a certain degree based on those A levels, and then you finish and you're like, I kind of don't want to do this, and then
it's literally exactly. It's like I'm doing computer science. I'm not saying I don't want to be a software engineer, but it's kind of like, okay, look around. Everyone else is applying to software engineering. I'm doing computer science. I can't just apply to like be a cricket teacher. Like I can't do anything. So you
Well,
might as well apply to software engineering just to
You
go
could,
with the flow.
you could.
You could.
Yeah.
You could. That's true. But I think it's taking those risks
That's the thing. It would be a risk.
it would be a risk.
Yeah, and I always tell that to people. Is there's certain points like along my career where there's been many times where I've had to take a risk to stay in sport, basically. Okay. And if you're not willing to take those, and if your family isn't,
I was going to ask about that because I remember reading saying that your dad would even have sold his house just to like help you make the Olympics.
Yeah, I did
so,
say
like,
that.
What is that level of support? Obviously, like it means a lot to you, but what did that? Do you think without that level of support, it just wouldn't be possible to reach this high of a level?
It's difficult. So when I was at Crystal Palace, I was still Crystal Palace, obviously South London. I was going to school at the time I was in Challenge, which is Amersham, so the end of the Met line. So it'd take me an hour and a half on the train just to get to training, then train for 3 hours, and then have to go home. So I was coming home most nights at like 10 p.m. and I was leaving for school at obviously like 7. So that's a long day to have every day.
It's very long. Yeah.
So I basically didn't see my parents, which is one thing. They had to be comfortable with just never seeing me.
Right. Normally it's the other way. Normally it's the kids that they're like, if mum or dad are like traveling for work, they don't get to see them.
I was the one traveling. And then, so they have to be comfortable with that. Then they have to be comfortable with the injury side of sport. So my parents taken me to the hospital so many times. And
I'm dealing with that stress as well because at the end of the day, they are like your parents.
Exactly.
Every injury is a
hit
for them.
I didn't pick a safe sport. So there's that as well. And then there's the stress of like school and them knowing me and what I'm capable of at school, but then maybe not fulfilling that because I've got other commitments.
Right.
So yeah, I guess they should do a podcast on how to raise an Olympian, to be honest. It would be quite interesting.
Definitely, yeah.
It is a crazy amount of sacrifice on their part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I'm just going to move on now to actual diving career. I wanted to ask, what's been the best experience of your career so far?
To be honest, the home Commonwealth Games we had in Birmingham was the Commonwealth Games. Diving's just been cut, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it just got cut from the upcoming one because Brisbane fell through, Glasgow picked it up, but they're doing a reduced version because some economist somewhere has done a cost-benefit analysis.
You should do the analysis.
Yeah, I should do a different analysis. Yeah. So they've cut diving, and so maybe I did the last one. I don't know. Hopefully it gets reintroduced. But home games is rare. The pool was new. Every single one of my uni friends was able to come.
Exactly.
And obviously, it went really well. Got a medal. It could have been any better. And obviously, it's not got the pressure of an Olympics because it's just not the same level of competition.
Okay.
A lot of big nations missing, and that's true for every sport at the Commonwealth Games. But it means that as an athlete, you're a lot more relaxed. You can enjoy the experience more, and you still get the whole village experience. The media is still huge. So it's like an Olympic Games minus the pressure.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's definitely, it's a rare opportunity. Yeah. It was kind of great. And you get used to competing in front of a massive crowd, which you don't get in smaller sports. You don't get that opportunity very often.
Yeah. Did you kind of get that experience of performing in front of huge crowds? Because you were obviously junior champion as well. Did you get that experience then, or was the pressure very different when you're younger?
I think at junior comps, the most when I became junior European champion, it was 2014. We were in northern Italy, Bergamo. Okay. And the crowd was only, like 500 to 1,000. It's not
only.
Yeah,
I know. Comparatively,
not that big. Right. And the same for when I was at Junior Worlds in Russia. The crowd was probably like 1,000, something like that. And they're all like people that know diving.
Related to it.
Yeah, related to diving. And then I did other competitions, other Grand Prix. We have a Grand Prix circuit like F1 has basically, nice. Where you get to travel around the world and compete, and they're all similar sizes. So it's not. Commonwealth Games was, I think, 5,000, 6,000.
Wow.
So it's like multiple size times the crowd that you're used to, and the media you feel Like
Right.
when you make a social media post,
Yeah.
like Instagram just blows it up, and then that's when you start to think, oh, there's actually a lot. There's so many more eyes than you even realize.
Definitely. And I guess the eyes now are not so much people who are directly related to diving.
No,
So I guess
they're
Exactly.
a lot of newcomers to the sport,
right.
which makes it more pressure because you're like,
Exactly.
I can't be crap.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And now I'm just gonna move on to something which I read that you had over 8 years you had 3 surgeries. Could you just talk me through, those injuries and kind of what's the hardest part of diving or sports that most people don't see? Because obviously they'll see your accolades, they'll see that, he was in the Olympics, he was a European champion, Commonwealth Games winner. But all of these hardships, kind of how does that work for you?
Yeah, it's a strange one where so those injuries actually, I had a really successful junior career, and then there's obviously in every sport there's a really difficult transition between the junior and senior. There's a big gap, and that's when I had all my injuries. So
wow.
if I'd basically quit, my career would have looked like I would have been one of those people that was great, had the talent, and then never made it. And that was one thing that motivated me. But what happened was, directly after Junior Worlds in 2015, I had the first major injury was my right shoulder. I had scar tissue build up around my, can't remember the name of the nerve, but it's at the front of the shoulder. And it basically went to a competition, and I woke up one day and I literally couldn't move. I was brushing my teeth and it felt weird. Like I couldn't move my arm properly. And then I tried to do a somersault in the gym before my competition, and like my arm basically just didn't move. Like I couldn't lift it really above 90 degrees.
Wow. And how you were 15 at this?
I was 16.
16.
Yeah, 16. And yeah, literally couldn't move my arm properly. And so we got it checked out, and there was so much scar tissue built up around the nerve that it was just suffocating it.
Wow.
So I had scar tissue removal, but the thing is, nerves take so long to recover. You can't physio a nerve,
exactly.
Which is even worse because you just have to give it time. So I had to train and stuff like that and keep fit, but like really just had to wait. So I waited, and then so first I decided to rest it. So I came back for a year, and then it didn't get better, so I had to have surgery. So really, the whole injury took 2 years.
Okay, and this is kind of at the peak of your
my junior career, yeah,
which is the most important because I guess you want to transition.
Exactly. So between 16 and 18, I wasn't really training.
Wow. I guess that's also tough. I guess mentally, we'll come on to that side as well. But you've gone from the adrenaline of every week or every day training, and then just kind of stopping that.
Yeah,
as it were.
And when people get excited about you, when you're 16 and you're third best in the world, people are like, right, you're going to make this.
You're third best in the world.
Well, I finished third at Junior Worlds. Yeah, for under 18s.
Okay.
So yeah, you can imagine like management's telling you things that they're expecting of you.
And there's nothing you can do. You just have to wait.
But I had to wait. Like I would have had a really good shot at making Rio.
Okay. Wow.
But it obviously didn't happen because I couldn't train. And then right when that injury finished, I'd came back and done a few of these Grand Prix, and I went to a competition in Calgary in 2019, which, by the way, to qualify for all these comps, I still had to go to a nationals and compete and finish in the top 4 or whatever. So I went to this competition in Calgary, and on my 5th round of dives in the final, took off and fully ruptured my right Achilles on the takeoff. So jumped, snapped, and then had to be flown home.
Oh my gosh.
For surgery. And Achilles ruptures, they take 6 months to just get back to walking. And then if you want to obviously do diving,
elite level sports.
Yeah, it takes a full year.
My gosh. And this was when you're 18, 19?
Yeah, exactly. So I just started, just about to start uni. Wait, 2019? No. I was actually taking like exams and stuff that year at university. So I was taking them in a crutch, in a boot.
No way.
And I'd literally, and at the time it was 2020 was going to be Tokyo Olympics.
Oh, wow.
So I literally thought I'd messed up my chances for Tokyo.
Yeah.
And luckily, for me, COVID pushed Tokyo back a year.
Right.
So it gave me an opportunity to potentially qualify for Tokyo.
Okay.
But because COVID lasted so long, longer than we thought it was going to last, they end up not having a nationals, and they end up just selecting a team based off previous performance.
Oh,
of
really?
which
Okay.
I hadn't really done much.
But you are fit enough to qualify if there was a nationals.
If there was a nationals that year, I was training for a nationals, and they ended up not having one.
Oh,
and I was in really good form as well. But literally that 2021 year, I ruptured the other Achilles.
Oh my
so
gosh.
I was training for this nationals that never happened, and ended up rupturing the other Achilles because of training for this nationals that never happened to qualify for Tokyo 2021.
Could you just talk me through, like, all these injuries are kind of like you're building, you're going higher and higher, and then it drops, and then you go higher, and then you drop. What are you thinking, like, when these injuries happen? Like, what's the process of kind of speaking to your coaches, your parents? Like,
you know what? It's when I was young, my mentality was I've got time.
Mm-hmm.
So my shoulder injury, I was like, no worries, no one. You don't need to go to an Olympics at. I would have been 18 or something like that. I still could have done Tokyo and Paris and potentially LA. So that's 3 Olympics. And then when I did my first Achilles, that was difficult because I'd fought so hard to come back from the nerve injury,
right?
Because it was not like, oh, I've just got injured and I'm built up.
Yeah.
It was like I got injured, rested it, and then that didn't work because I'd already been training and it was still bad. Had to have surgery and then built up again. So it was almost like 2 injuries in one.
I guess after the surgery, there's a bigger hill to climb.
Exactly. And my shoulder even now doesn't move the same way as the other one.
Wow.
Because it just feels weird. I can't describe it. My shoulder blade like moves in weird ways. So it's something you have to get used to. And after I did the first Achilles rupture, I really thought that was it.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, I'm not, because I was at that age where I was starting, like I was at uni, and I could have just gone straight into a job the next year or whatever. And I thought I'd regret it forever if I quit at that time. So, and my coach and my parents were both like encouraging me to stay in sport, and because they still believed in me. There was some people that didn't. My mum was telling me to quit, and yeah, she's not.
Do you think it's because of the fact that she doesn't like you seeing getting hurt?
Probably. I mean, it's one of those where that was probably her instinct, and also, I'd never proved myself at a level where it was like, oh, you can get back to that level. It was all unknown. Like I was just still a kid.
I guess it's hard because you're at top 3 in the world when you're 15,
16, yeah.
And then since then you've had 2-3 injuries. Now you're at the age of 18, 19, 20.
Yeah.
But you don't know what's happened in those 5 years.
That, and also like the jump in level. Like it's not like I was able to stand on a world stage before I got injured as a senior athlete. And then I got injured, and it was about building back up to that level. I would have to not only get back from my injury at that time, but also get better at diving.
Yeah.
So that's kind of difficult because you don't know if you can get better at diving.
Especially when there'll be countless other people around the world who didn't have any of these, well, as many of these like,
setbacks,
kind of blips, and they can keep growing.
So they're all getting better, and you're playing catch up constantly.
Right. Sounds like university.
Basically is. And then the second Achilles, which happened in 2021, the year of Tokyo, that one I really thought I'd have to quit.
Okay.
I remember doing it at training. It was at training. And I did it in a very similar way to doing the first one, just on a running takeoff. And even all my teammates, because it happened at the pool, we were all training at the same time, they thought I was going to quit. And no one knew what to say to me. Like whenever I spoke to people, they were just like, I'm so sorry, man. And it's kind of like, it was one of those things which potentially should have been career ending. Mm-hmm. And because no one in the world of diving has ruptured both Achilles and got back to
at this
level. That level.
Can you walk me through that process? So like the scenario right now is that you've ruptured both your Achilles. You've had big injuries. Everyone thinks that this is career ending.
Yeah.
And now you're telling yourself and everyone around you, or your parents and your coach are saying, keep going. What was that process from there to where you are now?
It's funny because I think when I did the second one, everyone had given up. including myself. And there was only 2 people that still thought it was worth going on, which was my coach, Dave, who sadly passed away that year, and my dad. They were the only 2 people. And I think if it wasn't for them, I would have quit. And to be honest, even when I came back to training that year, I came back with in mind, I was just like, oh, let's see what happens. But I was ready for it not working out. And that's why when I injured my Achilles for the second one, I decided to take that job at JP Morgan.
Okay.
Just thought, while I'm in this boot, I might as well try and set up a career.
Exactly, in case it doesn't work out.
In case it doesn't work out, exactly. So I was training and working at JP Morgan at the same time, like doing physio and stuff like that. And then I think it was like 4 months into my internship, my probation period, I said to my manager, like, I'm going to try and get back into sport. So when they eventually asked me if I wanted to stay at the end of my 6 months, I was like, no. And I quit. Wow. And I came back to sport, which in hindsight was a massive risk, because it could have just like, I could have just done terribly and then come back 6 months later and been like, can I have my job back? Luckily that didn't happen. But it was worth the risk. I couldn't live with the fact that if I'd just given it up there.
Is it because in your head you think there was potential, and if you didn't try it out, you'd kind of regret that?
I think that's always what it is, to be honest.
Right.
Like, I think most sports people, there's always this thing of like, the only reason you sort of do it deep down is because you want to know what you're actually capable of doing.
Okay.
It's not necessarily the rational thing to do.
Yeah.
It's kind of like this selfish exploration of self, which keeps you motivated. It's like, oh, if this doesn't make any sense. I don't know what's possible, but I'll regret it for the rest of my life if I don't try. And that's enough. That's enough motivation for you to do it.
Okay.
Even though you're not going to earn any money.
Yeah, I guess if money was your motivator, that JP Morgan would have been the place to stay.
Yeah, it would have been the place to stay, for sure.
Okay, great. I now just want to kind of, could you break down what a perfect dive is? Because, obviously you've got this 1.6 seconds for a 10-meter dive. That moment from, I think you've said previously, you lock eyes with the end of the board to making that release, to counting the number of turns you make, knowing when to kind of put your hands out, and then hitting the water. Can you talk me through that whole process of what you're thinking and that whole from top to bottom? Yeah,
so I mean, everyone has their own competition routine. Okay. Every diver will be different. Some like to go up to the board really early. Some like to go up to the top really late, like almost like run up the stairs and then just go. So they don't have much time to think. Yeah. For me, I'm very methodical and I have a very fleshed out routine. I'll do like a meditation. I'll talk to my coach on poolside. He'll give me a coaching comment, something to focus on for the dive that we've discussed beforehand. I'll do a visualization and a meditation on the 1 meter platform, and then one diver will go. I'll do the same on the 3, a diver will go, same on the 5, then the 7, diver will go, and I'll make my way up to the 10 meters. So there's about 4 or 5 times that I'm going through the dive. The same thing in my head before I actually do it. But when I'm actually on the board, I'll take a breath in, make sure I see the dive really clearly, almost feel it in my head, like what it's going to feel like and what I want to do. And once I feel settled and it's really clear and it's stuck, like literally seared into your mind, that's when I throw my little towel down and walk to the end and go. And for me, like if I can hold that feeling whilst I'm about to take off and there's no distractions, usually I can execute exactly how I'm thinking in my head.
Wow, okay.
But if you even go out for a split second, or you lose that visualization, or that something cuts that connection, that's when there's that little bit of doubt that creeps in, that bit of blankness in your mind, and that might find its way into the dive. Because generally the dive you're doing is like you've done so many times, a lot of it's off muscle memory. And so you don't really want to think about it. You want to feel it, but you don't want to think about it.
Yeah, I get that. So when you're kind of walking, you've dropped your towel and you're walking, do you kind of, ignore all the sound around you? Because obviously, especially in like, let's say the Commonwealth Games or the Olympics, everyone's screaming or like cheering you on. When you're there, is it just literally your visualization, your mind, and then kind of ignore everything else?
For me, yeah. I mean, because my parents asked me after the Commonwealth Games, they're like, "Oh, how did you find the huge?" Because a home games, the raw, and we opened out, me and Ben, for our synchro competition, so we were first diver, and the sound was like nothing I've ever heard before. And for me, like, I didn't even look at the crowd once.
Really?
Like through the whole competition, I made sure not even to look over, even though I had all my friends with like stupid shirts on, with my face on and stuff like that. And I knew they were all there, but like I made an effort just to not even, like, I had a job to do, and I just kept focused with the end of the board. I think, but it is impossible to not let it get to you in some way.
Yeah.
So you have to almost be aware that you're going to have that bit more power, a bit more adrenaline, and then adjust for your dive.
Yeah.
To make sure you don't, overcook it, basically.
Okay. Because I think, it's not directly related to sports, but just overthinking generally is something I think most university students do. I do it myself. How do you kind of... I'm going to rephrase the question. So I'm going to say that I'm curious to know what your mental process is when, let's say, you're on that edge of the board. There must be so many thoughts going through your mind. I know you're saying you're locked into your visualization, but it's kind of, I feel like it's harder said than done. So what's your mental process like? Are you really calm, or do you actually feel the nerves?
No, you do feel the nerves for sure. It depends on the context of the competition. When you're opening out round one, your first of 6 dives, it's all about being calm and just getting the competition started, something solid to set your base. But then, in the final round, you're looking at the scoreboard and you're thinking, right, what scores do I need to get this result, and things like that. And everyone has their own, like, some people love looking at the scoreboard. I look at the scoreboard because I like to know, I'm like, okay, I need 8s, so I need 9s. And it really fuels me for that last dive. Some people hate looking at it and it will psych them out.
Okay.
So I guess it depends, but it is funny, like, some of the best divers in the world are the ones that have absolutely nothing going on upstairs. Okay. Yeah. I'm not saying like they're stupid or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, they literally, like, there's one of the Chinese divers, and every time I speak to him, his English isn't great, but like when I watch him dive, there's no thinking at all.
He's just like in a state of calm.
Exactly.
Or at least it looks as though he's in a state of calm.
Well, not even. It's just like a state of, it looks like he doesn't care.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like he just would turn around and just go. And you're just like, did he even like care about how that dive went? It looks like, because it doesn't look like it.
Right.
And the guy I'm talking about, Kyle Yan, he's like completed the sport. He's Olympic champion on like 3 out of the 4 events.
Wow.
Across multiple Olympics. So that is probably the ideal scenario. Okay. But realistically, it's not possible for me and my personality, and for most other most other people.
I mean, you said you did like a small meditation before. Yeah. I think obviously I was going to ask you what your meditation is about, but before that, I think for people who try and get into meditation, there's always that aim of kind of just not thinking about anything, which I've tried a couple of times. It's impossible for me. Like, when I tell myself don't think about anything, I think about too many things.
So, the meditation that I'm doing isn't it's not that sort of clearing your mind sort of meditation. Right. So there was a guy who I met, his name's John, at the pool, and he teaches something he calls it PWR, which is postural workout. I can't remember what they are. Routine, I think.
Okay, sure.
Repatterning or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
But essentially what it is it's like tensing certain muscles and fixing your posture in a certain way that it distracts your mind.
I see.
When you've got a really good posture and you feel like your spine supports you properly, etc. Yeah. and you're squeezing and tensing certain muscles so that you feel really solid and really powerful. Almost like, some people do like a superhero pose or whatever, and it like evokes certain feelings. It's kind of based off that.
Okay.
Because the problem is, like, people, like, let's say breathing, if you're trying to focus on your breathing, but the thing is, if you've got nerves coursing through your body, you've got all this adrenaline, and then you start going, you start focusing on your breath, you kind of, you're not able to focus on a dive, let alone calm yourself down.
Exactly.
So it's really about getting all that that adrenaline and taking it, but not getting rid of it, but just settling it and using it.
I see what you mean. Like targeting it towards what you need to do.
So using it and then putting it into the visualization of your dive, where you feel like confident and powerful, etc.
Okay.
It's kind of that's what I found really helped me.
Yeah, I find that really interesting. Just the idea of visualizing your dive, because I didn't really think of that. So it's when just before you're going off, you're actually like in your head, you're thinking about what's going to happen.
Literally, like I'll shut my eyes and I'll imagine going through the process and what my muscles will do. And this is the thing, you can visualize something really well when you've done it so many times the exact same way.
Okay.
And like, for example, when you're learning a new dive, you can't visualize it because you've never done it before. Yeah, which is why it goes wrong all the time.
Okay.
But the clearer you can see it, you see it so clear that you can literally turn, and the feeling you get in the air is exactly what you experienced on the board.
Right.
And so when you're spinning in the air, you know exactly what to do to make the dive go well at the end.
Is that when you know? Because I was going to ask, when you watch someone dive, how do you know when to turn and when to make that final extension of your arms? Is that just to practice?
Some people like seeing, like actually when they're spinning, they'll look
like imagining themselves from like a third person point of view.
Not third person, like ballerinas, like when they do their spins, the head stops they look and they spin and the head stops so they can count how many things. Basically like that, but with somersaults.
Oh, wow,
that's what some people do. They really use their eyes to sort of think, right, that's 1, that's 2, that's 3. I need to put my feet or put whatever in this place, and then the dive will go well.
Okay.
Some other people, they basically do the dive like with their eyes shut. Their eyes aren't shut, but they won't be looking for cues. They'll be just feeling. So when you're spinning in the air, you'll feel what we call a tip. So it's like you feel this like swing on each somersault, and you use that feeling to then dictate your timing, basically.
I see.
So it's all off rhythm and timing.
And which one do you kind of?
I use a mixture of both.
Okay.
Which is,
so your eyes are open.
They're open. I'm taking things in, but I'm relying on feel more than visual things.
Okay, I see.
Which I think is most common for most divers.
Okay, and when you like hit that water, that first contact, do you know straight away in yourself whether that dive's gone well or not?
Oh yeah, instantly.
Instant,
yeah. Even sometimes as your hands are touching, because you know what position your body is in. Yeah, exactly. You know if it's going to go well or not. Yeah.
Okay, and now following on from that, I just wanted to ask, so diving's A, it's a dangerous sport, B, it's kind of one of the most fast-paced sports, I guess, in the sense that, most sports like cricket or football even, you've kind of got between, let's say a game goes bad, you've got a few days or a few weeks before the next chance to kind of redeem yourself. You've got, I don't know, like a few minutes, or I don't know the time frame, but between like 6 rounds, there's
usually like 10 minutes per dive. Yeah.
So what do you think? Let's say hypothetically, the first dive has gone not so good, and now you need to like reset really quickly, react to that. What are you thinking about that?
You know what? I think this is something I'm actually quite good at.
Okay.
Because I struggled with 2 of my dives on my list for a long time, and they always used to go bad, and I usually had to make it up with the other 4.
Yeah.
And it happened to me in the Olympic semi-final. So I did round 1, great. Round 2 is like my worst dive, and it went really bad. I got like 2s.
Okay. Is that out of 10, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like really overcooked it. And it's really hard to make your way back up the field after doing a dive that bad. But then it's a weird one where I was like, right, when I knew I had to do then 4 really good dives to make sure I qualified for the final, you start to approach the dives differently, and you're like, right, instead of trying to make it perfect, let's just make it good and play it a bit safe, so we can go for each one. And it kind of like, it gives you that bit of motivation in a weird way where you're like, right, I messed that up, forget it, right, I really need to focus. And that I think I used that drive really well.
Okay.
And I ended up doing 4 really good dives, qualifying for the final in 6th place.
Wow.
And if I hadn't done that bad dive,
okay,
if I'd taken the one I did from final and put it into that list, I would have qualified in 1st or 2nd, I think, for the final.
Wow.
So it's kind of funny how it works, like the psychology of like your list order and doing dives like that. But the worst thing was I sort of used all my mental energy to do that. So by the time I got to the final, I was like, God, I'm exhausted. Like,
yeah, I can imagine. I feel like obviously physically it's incredibly tough, like the training, but also mentally this must be, there's so much internal self-talk?
Diving's definitely more mental.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I say that it's kind of like 50-50, which is kind of why I like the sport, because it's like physically impressive, but also like it's really about how you can compete, how you know yourself, all this sort of things. Like you got people that they can do all the dives in training, but put them in a competition, it will never go their way.
Yeah.
And you got other people that train like absolute rubbish.
Okay.
And then as soon as they're in comp, they just start whipping out dives that you've never seen. You're like,
how do you do that?
Yeah, where's this come from?
Yeah.
So it is super interesting in that sense.
It's really I mean, nothing of that level, but it's kind of similar to just exams and academics generally. It's like, you know, some people prepare incredibly hard, and on the day of the exam, they just bottle it under pressure.
Exactly.
And some people kind of just like walk into the exam hall and come out and say that was pretty chill.
Pretty chill.
And yeah, I kind of just want to ask a bit on failure, because this is very, very different to what obviously your field, but in my A-level exams, so this is just 2 years ago now. So I was in maths, further maths, physics, computer science. In my maths exam, I kind of found maths pretty chill, pretty durable. I kind of had a little bit of that confidence. I'm not going to say it's like arrogance, but it's kind of, you just feel like comfortable with maths.
Yeah.
And in the exam, I ended up finishing it 45 minutes early and just sitting there. And in the last minute, I turned over and I've missed out 2 pages of my maths exam. And that's the one A level I needed to get into Imperial. So that was the first exam. I have 2 left over the next 2 weeks. And straight away after that, like my mental process was going nuts, because I was like, this is the one exam that I should be getting 100% in.
Which exam was it?
This was maths, so pure and stats.
Okay.
So I'd missed out, I think it was 20 marks out of 100, which is not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But
did you manage to finish it?
So finish.
As in, so you turned over the page, saw there was 2.
No, it was 1 minute left. My hands were shaking.
Oh, you literally didn't even do it. Yeah. You just left.
And it was the easiest questions. It was just like a bar chart and putting scatter points or whatever.
Oh no.
But it's just that idea of, oh my gosh, this is it. So then I had 1 exam left, and I think for me it was really tough in the sense that I knew I think I would still be fine to get the A star, but I really wanted to do extremely well.
Yeah.
So that last exam, I'd put pressure on myself you have to get close to 100%. And dealing with that failure was pretty tough. It was kind of my first experience of just, what have you done? This is a real A level.
Yeah.
How do you kind of deal with failure?
I think, maybe it's not. Maybe it is sort of comparable. I'm trying to think, because it is kind of different in the sense where in sport, there is, the things that are similar is there is scenario, like for example, an Olympic final. Like you can only prepare to be great. You can't choose to be great on the day and in that competition. And they are the sort of competitions that do define your career.
Yeah.
But the other more difficult thing is, like, for example, in 2023 Worlds, I had the best competition of my life.
Okay.
Literally.
In what way?
I was, by round 5, I'd done 5 basically dives to my maximum.
Wow.
Like, as in what I'm capable of. I was sitting in second place with a dive to go, and my last dive wasn't even that bad. It was still pretty solid. So I did 5 amazing dives and 1 good dive, and I finished in 5th because my last dive just wasn't to the level of the first 5. And then no one cares because you finished 5th.
Yeah.
You finish and people are like, oh, you dived really well. What could have been, that sort of thing. But me personally I was so much more happy with that performance and what I'd done there. I sort of look at that as like a career high compared to when I was double European champion or got my Commonwealth medal. Yeah. I dived so much worse.
Okay.
Like I competed way worse. I was nowhere near the level that I had to compete at to get a 5th place at Worlds. But from the outside, everyone's like, oh, you did so well, etc. All that stuff. And you sort of sat there like, this is crazy because no matter, it's not actually based off how good you are. It's just it's like luck, competition, and who else is there. All these other external factors.
So what happens on the day? Literally like a split minute.
Yeah, and based on like who shows up and things like that. That was a really competitive final, that Worlds. And maybe with your exams and stuff like that, it's sort of like there is a bit of the standardization. Like you could have a really good exam, but if everyone finds it easy, then you're screwed.
Exactly.
And it's kind of, and the nice thing with exams is you could resit.
Okay.
Whereas in sport you can't resit.
Yeah. If your career's ending, it's ending.
Exactly. Or you have to wait 4 years for another Olympics.
Yeah.
And if you're at your prime, you've passed it. There's nothing you can do.
You can't buy back time and say, put me 4 years younger.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. So with sport, I would say it's kind of like you have to be comfortable just knowing what you're capable of and doing it just to see what's possible, and knowing that it doesn't really define who you are. Like, for example, if I'd missed out on making my Olympic qualification,
Okay.
it wouldn't have said anything less about my diving skills. I would have trained the same, but
Yeah.
it just might have not gone well for me on the day.
Okay.
So it doesn't
Yeah.
say anything less about how good of a diver I am or anything about my character. And I know that. But
Yeah, that's really interesting.
but to everyone else, now, luckily it went well for me and I made an Olympic final. But to them, there's like, oh, you're an Olympian, you must be great. But if I hadn't gone to the Olympics, I would have been the same person. I would have achieved the same amount to me.
Yeah.
I would have put in the same effort or
Your
the
skills
dedication.
still would have been the same.
Exactly. There's some really great athletes out there that honestly they work harder, they're more interesting than some of the best athletes you would have heard of that have got all the accolades. But just things might have not gone well at points in their career, like small little moments that do define careers. And that's just the nature of sport. It's kind of brutal like that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's kind of like loads of little things kind of add up to like kind of make the big accumulation.
Big accumulation, yeah, exactly.
And how do you kind of deal with the idea of, like you said, that Worlds 2023 Worlds where you think you've performed one of your best, but people outside are kind of telling you what you should think is like, no, like you didn't come top 3. Like, what are you thinking? But in your head, you know that I've performed well. So obviously, it's nice to kind of think that it doesn't define who you are. But I feel like practically, surely there's a lot of self-talk going on that you're thinking it's gone well, but people are telling you it's not. So you're changing, or do you kind of not let that affect you?
The thing is, people who know the sport will respect it. People who are at the competition.
It's people like who don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's only the actual outside of the diving bubble that it gets that discrepancy between achievement and what actually happened.
Okay.
It is, what is really difficult because you start receiving praise for things which you don't feel like you should receive praise for, and then you don't receive praise for things which probably deserve the most praise.
That's very interesting.
But that's just the nature of it. Like it really is. It kind of, I think that it's kind of the thing where like if you've got an Olympic medal, it doesn't define your career and it won't change your life. People will only care for 6 months, maybe a year, and then boom, like you're out of relevancy and you're forgotten, and then you're sat there like, great, you got your Olympic medal, but if you weren't happy with all the stuff outside of sport, you'll still be unhappy. You won't it won't fulfill you 100%. In that sense. So you kind of have to be very clear about what is it about sport that fulfills you.
Okay. Throwing that back at you. So what about diving or sports kind of leaves you with that sense of purpose?
A few things, like for example, I've been coaching like 8 years. I love coaching. That's probably one side of things. Is like learning, basically passing on everything that I've learned, whether that be to do with sport or to do with like balancing a school and things like that. There's that side, that mentorship, and then there's the inspiring side where you get to go into schools to do talks and etc., which is really kind of best part of the job, to be honest. And then there's the selfish side, which is like you're traveling with your friends, you're staying in nice hotels. Yeah. It's a lifestyle thing where it's kind of like, this is not like a job that anyone else has.
100%.
And it's kind of a really unique experience for not only the lifestyle, but also you put yourself in scenarios which really you start to see who you are and you learn more about yourself.
I think what you were saying earlier of just seeing what you're capable of.
Exactly. And that's kind of the most fulfilling thing, is that even if what you did in your day to day was really difficult, you end the day and you're like, I actually feel like I've done something. I feel like I've learned something. It's very tangible. Yeah. And that is very different from a normal job, I would say.
Very
true. That's the main thing that's missing, really.
And that's kind of want to move on to that, saying that, you went from gymnastics to diving, junior champion, to LSE, to JP Morgan, and now Olympic diving. So you've got quite an insane CV. But how did you... I find it hard to think how you dealt with that shift from the adrenaline of everyday training and competing to going to work for more of a desk job at JP Morgan, which it's incredible. But I'm just saying, from your perspective, how does that difference feel? How do you switch those two sides of your life?
I think it's difficult because I didn't do it for long.
Okay.
And obviously, the desk job was novel for the first 6 months, and then I left. So it would kind of be interesting if you asked me that question if I'd do it for a few years. But the difficult thing is, like, I've done something which was a passion for my job for 15 years.
Yeah.
And the things that I went into the sport that I loved, I end up hating at some point. Like when it becomes like when your salary depends on your performance, or when you got pressure that you never felt as a kid, when your friends and family praise you in a certain way for certain things that kind of aren't important to you. Like, I've never looked at my medals like once. I couldn't care.
Wow. Yeah.
Like I literally couldn't care, but they care more than I do, and that sort of motivates me and makes me care a little bit.
Yeah.
The fact that they care,
Exactly.
which is a weird thing. It's like I care because they care.
Yeah.
But I don't really care. So it's kind of a strange one where, like, when I went into work, it was you no longer have that like appraisal system. Okay. Where, like, if you want to do it, you have to do it because you want to do it.
Yeah.
And then when you do a good job, you kind of want to do a job because you want to do a good job, which is kind of different to what I experienced in sport.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where the motivation changes. And yeah, the most difficult thing is that at the end of the day, I didn't feel as empowered as I felt from sport, but that's because you don't necessarily every day have to go through the same challenges that you have to go through in elite sport. But having said that, now there is a limit where you're sort of like, God, I've done enough of this.
Okay.
I need to relax a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
And in a weird way, JP Morgan was more relaxing.
Which is, the average person would say that, but I think it's because you're used to kind of working at your peak all the time.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask about, so how do you, two things, how do you first balance your time? Obviously, you've kind of grown up doing that as a kid. You had no time, and now you're working and training as well, or you've been doing that. And then how do you switch between like elite sportsman life and then just a regular, you've got your relationships, you've got your friends, family. How does that switch?
You know what? I think I'm probably like the worst person to ask that question to, because like, I've always, no matter when I was at uni or no matter when I was working, like just having a normal life and then having sport be part of it was like literally like fundamental to me.
Okay.
Like I would never shy away from socials or if it was club nights or going out, things that weren't good for training, but like they were good for me. You know what I mean? Like they let me build like a really good network of people that just made my life sort of outside the pool way better. So it makes the transition a lot easier because it's sort of like, it's just like changing jobs.
Yeah.
Like, because like I went from, it's all sort of like you move from one job that's sort of like, okay, I've had enough of that, and you just move on to another, but nothing really feels like it's changed.
Yeah.
But I think for a lot of athletes, they've given up so much and they sacrifice everything for sport, and then you switch to a job where then you're able to do the things that you were sacrificing. But it's not like you can click your fingers and just magically have socials to go to or have things that you like to do or hobbies or interests, because you've never had that chance to explore them. And so you finish your career, a lot of athletes, and they're like, I don't even know what I like. I don't even know what hobbies. I don't know what's interesting. I don't know what kind of praise I even like. It's kind of a really strange one where you have an identity crisis.
Right.
And
it happens quite young for, obviously, like an athlete normally, I don't know, what's the average age for retiring and diving? It's like 35?
The latest is 30.
30.
Really?
Which is crazy. Like that's very young for average. Like that,
yeah.
You're only 30 years old.
Yeah.
Maybe
I mean, I considered retiring after Paris and I'm 26. So it's, yeah, I'm one of the oldest in my event.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So that's kind of crazy to think that people at the age of 25 to 30 can have an identity crisis. Because
sounds like a midlife crisis.
It sounds like a midlife crisis. So on that point, do you think it was really key or really important to you that you had that LSC or some degree? Because now you at least know at the back of your mind that you can kind of live a normal life when you're like.
The thing is, it's
post.
I use sport as like a chance for me to explore loads of different things and find what I liked.
Okay.
Because it does give you really cool opportunities. Like, for example, like I did a shoot with Apple this year. I've done some brand deals, like different campaigns. I made a short film with a friend of mine.
I saw that. It was incredible.
Which, like, firstly, like, not many films like that get made, especially just artistic short films. And also to be able to not only like star in it, but also like be part of the narration and decide the story to tell, and help produce it along with like some really talented people. It's kind of, you get exposed to loads of different things. And I was telling you before, like, my hobbies in music and things like that, like, they're sort of, I've tried to, with some of the free time that you get from doing full-time sport, like you get your evenings to yourself, like there's a chance for you to explore film, music, all these things that modeling, fashion, whatever it is, because you're an athlete, some brands will get you along, bring in, so you get exposed to a lot of different stuff. Exactly. So you don't, when you finish, like I kind of use those to try and get a better idea of what is it that I really enjoy.
Okay.
And what is a hobby and what's something that I'd maybe like to do later down the line.
So like, in your eyes, what's next for you? So I know you said you're starting a new job. Is that going to be kind of the main part of your life now, or is it still going to be training heavy for the next Olympics or the next competition? What's next?
It's a difficult one where, like I said, I start on Monday.
Wow.
And I only signed the contract like this week.
Oh wow. Congrats.
But thank you. And the job I'm doing is like financial strategy, and it's a full-time role. But the company, so I was telling you, the CEO reached out to me after my final in Paris on LinkedIn and was like, "Oh, saw you at JP Morgan. Would you ever like to get back into the corporate world?" And I thought to myself, like, I cannot just train for another 4 years. Like the last 3 years, almost drove me insane just training, because like
in what way?
You train all day and then you come home and all you're thinking about is your training session. You got nothing to occupy your mind outside of the pool, and everything you do then becomes, I was telling you earlier, like you sacrifice everything and everything you do becomes centered around diving, and it's kind of exhausting. And the little things that might annoy you about training start to creep into your normal life. So like if you had a niggle or you're slightly injured, it's sort of like you come home and then you're like, oh, should I massage it? Should I ice it?
Yeah, you're thinking about it just constantly.
And you get burnout. And I felt burnout. And you get burnout from all the traveling and the stress of competing and stuff like that. And the thing is, it's not like a normal sort of burnout. It's like you'll turn up to training, you'll try and train, and then the dives won't go your way. And you're like, I'm fit, I'm healthy, I'm doing everything right. Why can't I perform?
Oh wow, and that kind of feeds back into
this cycle of like, I'm not performing, so I need to change this, and it just this downward spiral of like, by trying to do more and more, you end up making it worse and worse. And that's why I think for this cycle, I wanted to try and have something outside of the pool. I don't know, I might have bitten off more than I can chew with like taking a full-time job, and my schedule would be completely different. But like I said, I'm 26 and I sort of feel like I should kind of start a career. Start a career, but also like try and explore what I'm actually wanting to do. Because I'll finish after LA, hopefully, if I get to LA. It's a long time away. And I'll then have a choice to make of like where I want to go, whether it's maybe making films or going into music or actually using my degree. I don't know. But you don't know till you give things a little try. Yeah. So that's sort of the plan. And we'll see how it goes.
That's really inspiring. I think speaking for everyone at Imperial LSE, like we're trying to just do one of those things and we're struggling. You're like balancing, juggling all of them.
Yeah.
I just had a quick question about technology because I'm doing computer science and I guess this podcast normally has technology or finance people on it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, is there any kind of interesting technology that you've used in diving to maybe, even the other side of analyzing your fitness, that you've used to help you, or is there not too much in diving just yet?
We use a lot. Like, so the main one we use is the video replay we have on the side of the pool. So you do a dive and you look over to a screen, which is connected to an iPad that is on a video delay. So you can like do your dive, your coach will give you the comment, and then you can look at the screen and watch the dive happen. So you can relate the two.
Yeah, I've seen this in cricket. Like when I used to play nets, you bowl and then you look back.
Yeah, you look back. Yeah. Okay. And that's actually makes up the the most important part of tech that we use. The other part is around, God, there's literally so much we try. Like my physio is using this this machine that uses different wavelengths of electrical current when you get in a soft tissue massage.
Oh wow.
What it does, it vibrates cells at different frequencies to increase the exchange of molecules in and out of the cells to speed up recovery.
Wow.
And it's kind of like really cutting edge. You're exposed to really cutting edge stuff. Like even when I did my Achilles rupture, this is not something you get on the NHS. They took stem cells from my hip and implanted them into both of my Achilles, both times.
Oh my gosh.
And just to make sure that they could maximize the output of my Achilles afterwards. I'm trying to think of other examples. There's probably
those already are just pretty innovative. Like I feel like that wouldn't have happened maybe 10, 15 years ago. I feel like that's quite innovative.
No, they're on it with like, we got a team doc, we have a nutritionist, we've got like the best physios in the world. And then we're always trying to like eke out the 1%. So in Paris, we thought the pool was going to be a bit colder than what we used to train at. So we're using heated garments in between rounds to keep our muscles warm and things like that.
Wow. I love in sports just generally, I just love the level of detail which they look at.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in cricket. I just love cricket. So this summer I worked at Rajasthan Royals. It's a cricket team in India.
Okay.
And I was a data scientist there. And it's just incredible to see like the number of metrics they measure. So for in cricket, they measure things like the peak rotation of the shoulders, the load on your foot as you're landing. Yeah. All these things that you don't really think of as a spectator just watching someone dive. You don't think that they're going to be like measuring the temperature of the pool and like matching your body temperature.
It's probably similar in loads of sports, like the force decks. We're measuring jump height. We're measuring max peak force you can generate with your arms. Wow. When you hit the water with diving, all the weight goes through your triceps.
Oh, okay.
So tricep tears are like something really common. So we're constantly keeping certain markers that we test before we even train to make sure you prevent injury. A lot of it is very data-based because you need markers to know where you're at on certain days to make sure you can get the most out of each training session. It's definitely heading that way. Like I've been on the program for like 15 years, so like when I started, it's completely different to the way we use tech now.
And I think it's only just going to get better over the next, even in the next 5 years. I think by the time LA comes, I think there'll be new tech being used.
Hopefully.
Okay, just quickly, I think we'll wrap up soon. I just had a quick question about your training routine and your diet. So I'm vegetarian, I'm vegan. Yeah. And many people just say that, you don't get the protein, you don't get the kind of the full balanced diet you need. I mean, I'm not an elite sportsman, but even just to live like a healthy life. In your aspect, how does your diet and nutritionist kind of help you in your career? And then what does the training regime look like?
So our sponsors for like our recovery stuff changes all the time. Our protein bars that we were using were vegan.
Oh, really?
For the last cycle.
Are you vegetarian? Or?
No,
okay.
I eat meat. It's literally, the only reason is, one is because of like personal preference, but also the other is the convenience of the fact that like to hit the calories that I have to hit and to hit the protein content I have to hit for the day, the amount I'd have to eat is kind of crazy.
That would be crazy.
It's too crazy. Like I can barely manage it on meat. Sorry.
No, that's all right. I got it.
There we go.
Okay,
yeah, like if I tried, I think I have a competition weight, which is, for me, it's 60 kilos, and I'm 5'7". So to maintain that with the amount we train, where we're burning like 2,000 calories a day, just training.
Oh my god!
Like you have to make sure you get that plus the normal amount you need to maintain weight. So like if I'm maintaining weight, I need to at least hit like 3,200 calories for the day. And to gain, I have to hit 3,500. So it's kind of like it becomes really difficult.
That's true.
Yeah, you're sort of forced into a certain diet.
And how does that whole idea of a nutritionist work? Are you expected to measure every single meal? Are you allowed to have cheat meals? How does it kind of work?
It's kind of like if I was struggling for my competition weight or where I felt like I should be, they can put together a meal plan for the week. They can say you need to. It can be as controlling or as relaxed as you want. But then it does get to a point where, like, if you want them to be relaxed, you got to hit your weight, you know.
Okay.
Like, for example, when I came back, so in Paris, I was 60 kilos. I was pretty bang on, maybe a bit under. When I went on holiday and came back, I was 56.
Oh, you lost weight.
So I lost weight because, one, I wasn't eating as much because
Yeah.
my appetite had gone because I wasn't training as much.
Oh, wow.
And 2, when I'm not doing weights and I'm not putting my muscles under that stress, I'm naturally propped up already by the training, so my body returns to what it's naturally comfortable with and where it naturally sits at, which is sort of like 56, 57. So my fat doesn't change. Like,
Wow.
every time I've gone, we have DEXA scans, which give you a full body comp, tells you your bone density, all that sort of stuff.
It's incredible.
And every time I've gone, my body fat is almost the same. It ranges between 6.7 and 7.1. It
Wow.
never moves, whether I'm out of season and in season. That's just something that's unique to me. Other people, it fluctuates a lot more. But the one thing that doesn't change is my muscle mass. And so for me, muscle building is the most important part of nutrition,
Okay.
which going vegan makes it really difficult.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to? So obviously, not everyone's trying to get into the Olympics, but it's, everyone's trying to be healthy. What advice from what you've learned would you give to someone who's maybe they're going to the gym once or twice a week, but they're kind of confused? I'm talking about from my personal opinion. Like, I go to the gym, but you're kind of confused. You don't know what to do. You want to be healthy.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to kind of get started on that fitness journey?
I think there's so much stuff out there which is like, you need to eat this much protein, this much calories, and it doesn't matter where it comes from. But one thing this is not based off any data, by the way, I want to say that.
That's all right.
But one thing I've noticed is that with myself, when I was just trying to eat calories,
Okay.
I didn't really put on my muscle like that quick.
Okay.
But when I ate really healthy, but ate a lot of protein and like ate a really balanced diet, like, it was so much, I saw the results much quicker, and my muscle comps went up.
Okay.
I think you have to make sure that you're actually getting the right amount of, like, zinc, Vit C, Vit D, all of those extra supplements to make sure your body can take on whatever you're eating.
Okay.
It's kind of, for you going for the normal versions, going to the gym like once, twice a week, there's easy things you can do, like making sure you have your recovery like straight after the session.
Okay.
Making sure that if you're trying to gain weight, you've eaten beforehand, so you're not burning through your muscle or your fat. Depends what your goal is, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But like for me, if I trained on an empty stomach, it would just burn muscle.
Okay.
It would literally just eat away at my muscle during the training session. So for me, I found that if you're someone with a quick metabolism,
Yeah.
but I don't have the appetite, I end up eating like multiple meals through the day.
Okay.
Just to make sure I hit my quota, because I'm not that person that can eat 3 meals and that be enough.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't have that in me. So it's kind of just like being comfortable with a diet that you're happy with, and knowing that it's healthy.
Yeah.
It's important to know, like, the tracking apps like MyFitnessPal, and also like, I've used those, and they're great to sort of get a rough estimate of like where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of like, there's loads of these influencers saying stuff, but it is like kind of looking at your plate and thinking, does that look healthy?
Yeah, you can tell. Like,
you can tell. Yeah,
what's right.
You sort of,
especially with, like, all the processed foods, you kind of know, like, when you're eating something,
ultra processed stuff. Like, you'll have an idea, but you won't be. It's not like it's not rocket science, really. Like,
I guess, like, when it comes to your level, you have to, I guess your nutritionist has to like measure like real specific things. I guess for like an average person, if you just want to be healthy, you don't need to go into
it's not necessary unless you're in elite sport.
Does your like diet sometimes, especially during the Olympics, does it need to be analysed like to the highest level, or is it kind of still quite...
In the week of competition, we have a plan.
Okay.
And on the day of competition, there is an exact plan to fuel at the right times and to drink at the right times. In the Olympic Village,
they kind of give you that food which you need, or you...
There's so much.
Okay.
The food at this Olympics was terrible, by the way.
Really?
As in, it just wasn't tasty. Like, you can get nutritionally what you need.
Yeah.
But it was so...
I would have thought Europe would have been...
It was so bad.
Okay.
It was that actually was a big problem. Really? A lot of people were getting food shipped in by their teams because none of the athletes wanted to eat the food that they provided.
I just want to ask quickly before you wrap up, like, can you tell me about the life in the Olympic Village? Because I think I'm curious about it. Like, wow, anything about it.
It's strange. Like, you have it's like obviously like it's like a uni campus.
Okay.
And each country has their block with the headquarters at the bottom, where you got people from your, so for us, Team GB, people who from Team GB who are in the reception at the bottom. There's a coffee area. There's some of them have their own dining areas. We didn't. There's like PlayStation. We had a barista for the entire games when we were there. And there's like a little massive TV where you can watch all the sports. Through the day. And then you got above it all the accommodation. And you just...
And your family can stay with you?
No, family, no one's allowed in the village.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the accreditations from the IOC are really... Even some important staff that you have on a training basis aren't allowed in the Olympic Village. They have to stay outside.
Oh, wow, I did not know that.
Yeah,
okay.
like our physio, who was staying outside the village,
Whoa.
wasn't even allowed to stay in the village because they have a certain amount of accreditations. Because
Okay.
there's only a certain amount of accommodation.
Sure. Do you think it's also like the aspect of keeping it fair and everything, or is that not?
No.
Okay, it's just...
Sport is not fair. Let's get that. I'd like to get that in.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not an even playing field for sure. Yeah, but it's kind of everyone. You mix with everyone. Like we had one lift, so you get in the lift with like a new star every day, and you can have a chat, and it's kind of interesting to learn about different sports, and like you sort of get a vibe of the personality of like different sports to generalize. Our neighbours were the gymnasts, who are obviously like really closely aligned to us, who we know well. We were doing our gym sessions with like the hockey team a lot, the women's hockey team. It's interesting to see the different types of training as well. So different. There was sessions I was lifting with like some of the swimmers, and they're just like lifting like 4 times what I'm lifting.
Really?
But
I would have thought swimming and diving must, I've got no real
the
perspective.
swimmers they're just power sport. Like for the sprinters especially, they're just 6 foot whatever guys, and they're just swole, and they're just pure power pushing water. That's literally what's going to get them, and obviously technique, but like it's a power sport really. So it's so different to look at their training and our training, because we have this trade-off where if you get too big, you make more splash.
Oh, okay.
And you lose your agility, and you lose your speed in the air, your spin rate. Everything is decreased. Like if you're...
Does height matter, or is that not?
Height does matter. It does. If you're longer, it's harder for you to spin.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So we're all quite short.
Okay.
I think I'm like average height. I'm probably taller than most of my competitors in my event, which is kind of weird.
Really?
Like
5'7"
some of the guys in the men's Temi are really short. Yeah, it's the ranges between like 5'4" and 5'9", really.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, but you won't see a 6-foot diver often.
Really rare. I think the German guy's Timo, he's probably the tallest in our event. He's like 5'11".
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Brilliant. I just want to end on a quick fire round, if that's okay.
Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah, feel free to like skip a question if you don't want to. But the first thing I just want to ask is, what's your favorite diving location worldwide, or where your favorite place you've dived?
Favorite place I've dived? Shan in China.
Shan in China.
Yeah, pool was massive, and they don't use it. It's empty all year.
Okay. Wow. Have you tried cliff diving?
On holiday, yeah. I think the cliff I did was like 18 meters, something like that. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Do you listen to any favorite song when you're prepping for training or anything?
Depends. My music taste changes like month to month. So
okay, what's the current?
The current. What did I listen to in Paris? Actually, in Paris was bad. I was literally, because I'm a Tottenham fan.
Okay.
So, but I was literally looking at Dominic Solanke transfers during my Olympic final.
Committed.
So, yeah, committed Spurs fan. But it's just like whatever takes your mind off. But usually, I'm like a techno house sort of guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, something to like really amp me up. There's a song. It's called Meteora by Moonwalk. It's like this dark techno track. It's like quite gritty, and it's a proper pumper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Favorite post-competition meal? Like a cheap meal.
Cheap meal. Snickers.
Okay. Who's your role model, if you have any? Or someone you look up to?
That's a difficult one. I always. I was at school yesterday, and one of the kids asked this, and I didn't have any role models really when I was getting into sport.
Okay.
I think I never idolized someone just because they're good at throwing a ball, kicking, like just because they're good at something.
Right.
There's people who I admire outside of sport, but but I can't. I don't
Okay,
know.
that's all right.
Is it weird not to have a role
No,
model?
that's fair. Like,
Yeah.
there's-
Who are yours?
I mean, mine would be someone in tech, someone like Elon Musk. I mean, some parts of him. Yeah, I
Yeah.
see what you mean by role model.
It's
I don't,
hard. Yeah.
I don't want to kind of.
No one's worthy.
Perfect.
You know
Yeah,
what I
exactly.
mean?
I don't want to like take in everything from someone, but there's some aspects of some people like Elon Musk just pushing the boundaries to a whole new level.
Yeah, you respect
which
that he's
I
a
respect.
disruptor in some
Exactly,
sense, but
breaking
the
the
rest of it, not so much.
Okay, and if you could have dinner with one person, it doesn't have to be a sports person, who would it be?
Dinner with one person. Oh, Slavoj Zizek.
Okay. Any funny fan moments? If you have, like, when you've.
You know what? Singapore has some crazy fans, super fans of the GB team.
Really?
For some reason.
Okay.
I don't know why. One of them, like when we go on trips, I'm sort of just a passenger princess the whole time. Like I just go wherever they tell me to go. I don't know what flight we're getting. This girl had showed up with like a binder full of photos of all of us, like individual pages, color coded everything, and met us at the airport before we were flying from Singapore to Japan.
That's incredible.
And knew what flight we were getting. All this is kind of creepy.
Kind of creepy.
But I respect the hustle. Like she was there, and I was like, I don't even know what flight we're getting. How the hell do you know?
Inside information.
Exactly.
Oh wow. Okay. And favorite memory at university, if you have any. Or like
Favorite
the
memory?
favorite like thing you used to do at university.
We started Dodgeball Society at LSE for so we could do like the Carol and all the AU events and stuff like that. And it ended up just being like our group of mates being able to have this budget and just do whatever we wanted with it.
That's crazy.
Which is kind of great. And then I didn't end up doing because I couldn't, but they did a dodgeball tour in Bratislava.
No way.
When no dodgeball was played, and it was just they rented a boat in Bratislava and just had a piss up for like a week.
Sounds very fun. Perfect. The last question I just had was, I'm not sure if you kind of like giving advice, but if you could give a piece of advice to, let's say, an 18-year-old or 19-year-old, what would be your one piece of advice for just a takeaway?
My one piece of advice would be just to take a risk. You have to be willing to take a risk at some point. Like, because if you play it safe, if I played it safe at any point in my career, I wouldn't have ended up where I got. Mm-hmm. And I also would be in a scenario where I also wouldn't know what I could have achieved or what is possible.
Okay.
And it's kind of a scary decision and will be irrational at the time. Like, because I'm I like to logically think through everything.
Yeah, right. Same.
And it's kind of impossible to escape the fact or not listen to your head. But sometimes you got to just ignore that. And I think real maturity comes when you make a good decision on when it's best to ignore your head and just go with sort of your gut feeling.
Okay.
And I think if you interviewed like a lot of people and some of these, maybe Elon Musk or whatever, like he'd probably say the same thing. Is like there's points where you have to be willing to put your money where your mouth is, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really cool. And lastly, I have this thing on the podcast where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest.
Okay.
So the previous guest was a poet, and he asked the question, "What do you do to make people happy?" do you have any thoughts on that?
I would have said it was diving that made people happy.
Yeah. Sure.
But that would be a lie because it's purely been a selfish excursion. What do I do that makes people happy? I think if you ask my friends, I'm probably I'm extremely sociable.
Okay, I can tell. I like 1 hour of speaking.
Yeah. I try and make I try and always make an effort to sort of go out my way or make sure that everyone's having a good time. I like to be warm. I think that's the main thing. Is like
that's really nice.
I wouldn't say. It's kind of a different one.
It's a really difficult. When you asked the question, I was
what do I do to make people happy?
I was glad he didn't ask me that. I had no idea what to say. No, I think that's a fair response.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't think anyone sets out with
exactly.
the only intention is to make someone happy.
Yeah.
Unless there's something in it for them, which seems really selfish, but it's sort of true.
Yeah. Okay, and if you had to ask a question to the next guest, could you think of something? If you can't think of it now, we can do it later.
Who's your next guest? Do you know?
I have a professor of medical imaging and computing.
Medical imaging.
I mean, but it doesn't have to be a question about his career.
About his
Could
career.
just-
No, I'm sure you do a good job. I would ask. I'm trying to think of a mean question.
Go for it.
I would ask, what role does the state have in medical care going forwards, and how does he see it changing?
Okay, that's a really good question.
There we go.
Perfect. Kyle, thank you so much for sharing your story with me today on the Bytes of Intelligence podcast. From those early days, being selected as one of those 4 out of the 70,000 to now actually being an inspiration. You said you were out of primary school yesterday and just being here as well. I think for me, what stands out about you is not just the achievements in the pool. Obviously, you've got the incredible accolades, but how you've shown it's possible to break those boundaries, defy those odds, and just keep pushing. I think the one phrase I'd like to say is like, take a leap of faith.
Yeah.
Like you said, take risks.
Yeah.
So I think, diving is all about confidence, as you've said, and you've certainly given the next generation the confidence to dream bigger. So thank you so much, and good luck for the future.
Thank you. My pleasure.